Our story begins today, and we see Max lying unconscious on a sharp rock for 3 days and 3 nights. When he opened his eyes, he looked around and froze in place. In the distant sea, his fellow sailor lay on the other side, seemingly asleep and at peace. But as he approached them, his soul stirred, because they had all been dead for a long time. At that moment, Max realized he was the only survivor of the accident. His heart ached terribly, but despite everything, he gathered his strength and buried all the bodies on the beach. Darkness fell with the setting sun, and the silence of the forest and the unknown dangers prevented him from venturing further. So he climbed onto a large tree raft and sat there, terrified and trembling all night. He had only one thought on his mind: he had to find a way to escape. The next morning, when the sun rose, he saw the large screen of the ship he had been traveling on in the distance, and decided he had to go there and gather food, water, and anything that might help in the rescue. After an hour of effort, he managed to reach the ship. He was still going downstairs in the cabin when he suddenly heard the faint cry of a dog coming from a room.
He mustered his courage, grabbed his axe, and broke down the door with all his might. As soon as the door opened, he was shocked. His dog, Simba, was standing there, unharmed, breathing, his eyes full of life. The sight shattered Max inside, and tears of joy streamed down his face without him even realizing it. He knelt down and hugged him tightly, as if Simba had been given back a part of him that had been missing since the accident. Then he went into another compartment on the ship and found some canned food, a few tools, a rifle, and a large quantity of ammunition. He didn't think twice. Time was running out, and it was clear the ship was sinking bit by bit. He gathered everything he could carry and quickly brought it up to the deck. He cut wooden planks from the ship, tied them together with strong rope, and made a sturdy hoist. He lowered Simba first and tied him securely, then tied up all the other essential items. His situation was so dire that he even had to use the same rope to tie his belt. His mind was consumed by one thing only: saving his own life and Simba's. The raft was heavy with everything on it, but the high waves gave it a little help, pushing it toward the shore. After a terrifying struggle, they finally reached land. But the moment Max looked at what they had gathered, his heart sank. Food and water? Only enough for one meal. This meant that hunger would be their new enemy, and every step they took would have to be calculated 1,000 times. Max sat on the sand, his hand on Simba's head, his mind racing. He had to move. He had to find a solution, or the end would come sooner than he could imagine. He picked up the rifle, stood up, and looked toward the forest. The forest was dark and silent, but the feeling emanating from it was anything but comforting. Yet he still had a faint hope that he might find any sign, any way out, any path that would lead him back to the world. He took a deep breath, tied his belt tightly, and entered the forest. Little did he know that what awaited him there could change his destiny forever.
He walked through the dense trees until he found the house, an old wooden structure, almost like an abandoned hut, that looked like it hadn't been inhabited for years. Max sat for a while by the high waterfall behind him, listening to the sound of the water cascading down, trying to calm his mind, which was racing with thoughts. Then he continued walking until he reached a large, barren plain, its land wide and empty, the wind passing through it unobstructed. He walked slowly, step by step, until he reached the other side of the island. And there, he was completely shocked. As far as he could see, there was no other land, no people, no sign of life. Just sea. And worse still, this place was completely out of the ship's way. At that moment, any hope of rescue became almost impossible. That's why Max made a fateful decision. If any help came through here, even if it was small, it couldn't be wasted. He moved his living place right by the sea and built a rudimentary lookout point. Every day, he would sit for hours, gazing at the horizon through binoculars. The sun rose and set, days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. 6 whole months passed, and nothing had changed. One day, Max and Simba were searching for seashells among the rocks on the shore. Suddenly, Simba began barking wildly. At first, Max didn't pay attention. He thought it was a wave or a bird. But as soon as he picked up the jug to drink water, his eyes widened. Far, far away at sea, a large ship was sailing by. Max froze for a split second, then sprang into action. Without thinking, he grabbed the torch he had kept ready for just such a moment and ran as fast as he could. He reached the large fire he had built about 100 meters away and lit it. But the fire was taking too long. The wood was damp, the wind wasn't in his favor, and the smoke was rising more slowly than his heart could bear. Max stood there, his heart pounding in his chest, his eyes fixed on the ship, Every passing second a possibility that could mean the difference between life and death. Would the ship see the signal, or would hope be extinguished before the fire?
It didn't light quickly enough, and the flame was weak, its smoke thin and barely visible from afar. The further the ship moved away, the more Max's anxiety and tension grew. His heart was literally being squeezed. He was ready to do anything to get their attention. He grabbed his rifle, raised it towards the sea, and fired several shots in quick succession. Bang, bang, bang. But the sound of the shots was lost in seconds against the roar of the sea, and the ship continued on its way as if no one had called out, as if Max hadn't even existed. This was his last chance. Hope was slipping away before his eyes as he stood helplessly by. In his despair and desperation, Max did something crazy. He threw himself straight into the sea and began swimming with all his might, pounding the water with his hands and feet, as if he could forcefully reach them, as if he refused to give up. He kept swimming and struggling, second after second, minute after minute, until after a while, the terrifying truth dawned on him. He wasn't moving. The powerful waves were pushing him back, and the closer he tried to get, the more the sea pulled him. The ship was right in front of him, then it became smaller, then a distant point, and then it disappeared completely. At that moment, Max's body betrayed him. His strength was gone, his breath felt heavy, his arms were weak, and his mind went blank. The sea had taken him, and then brought him back. The waves threw him onto the shore like something broken. He fell onto the sand, his clothes soaked, his body exhausted, and his spirit shattered. He was lying on the ground, unable even to cry. At that moment, Simba ran to him. He circled around him, barking sadly, his voice filled with fear and pain, as if he understood everything that had happened, as if he knew all hope was lost. That sound broke Max's heart more than anything. He reached out with difficulty and placed his hand on Simba's head, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "Forgive me, I tried." Amidst the sound of the sea and the approaching night, Max felt truly alone for the first time. Any other human being could have endured his pain, but Simba's pain, his voice, and his sorrow were the things that broke Max's heart that night. He sat silently, lying on the sand, his head raised to the sky. The stars shone above him, clear and beautiful, but he saw no hope in them. He thought for a long time, ideas swirling in his mind without leading to a solution, until finally he arrived at one clear and painful truth. If no one would come to rescue him, then he had to make this place his home. The next day, without hesitation, Max threw himself into work. The first thing he did was find a safe place away from the high tide and strong winds. Then he gathered wood from the forest, branch by branch, plank by plank. His tools were few, but his determination was unwavering. In just one day, he managed to build the basic structure of a small shelter. From that day forward, he improved it every day, adding to it, strengthening it, and repairing what was broken. This routine continued for months, day after day, without him noticing the time passing. When a whole year had gone by, Max was standing in front of a large, simple, but beautiful country house, built with his own hands and effort. Little by little, he began to discover that the island wasn't as evil as he had thought. It had fertile lands and plants that grew on their own, pineapples and sweet mangoes, and wild animals he could hunt. The best surprise of all was a natural hot spring. Food was plentiful, water was available, fishing was possible, and most importantly, Simba was still with him. His life had become a fixed routine, waking up in the morning to search for food, during the day repairing the house or gathering wood from the forest, and at sunset, sitting on the seashore, gazing silently at the horizon. He wasn't waiting for a ship every day like before, but there was still a small part of him, a part that refused to die, telling him that maybe one day the sea would change its mind. He would always stand on the shore, gazing at the water stretching to the sky. Sometimes he'd think that maybe, just maybe, he could cross over and return to the world one day. But his life was no longer tied to that hope. The days passed and time slipped by without him noticing. 2 whole years went by, and although he was alone on that isolated island, he wasn't truly alone. Simba was with him in every breath, in every step, in every moment of silence. To keep him sane, Max invented many ways to cope with loneliness. Sometimes he'd carve his experiences and days on wood. Sometimes he'd write in old diaries he still kept. And sometimes he'd take out his flute and play a quiet tune. And whenever the sound of the flute spread through the air, Simba would wag his tail and hop lightly, as if he too was searching for small moments of joy in this isolated world. But no matter how hard a person tries, they can never completely escape loneliness. Little by little, Max's days began to resemble each other. The same shore every morning, the same trees, the same forest. And at night, when the world calmed down, the emptiness in his heart was screaming many nights. He would sit in a corner of his house and cry in a muffled voice, remembering his wife, her laughter, her tenderness, her presence. All of this had become just a distant memory that hurt him more than it comforted him. One day, Max and Simba were walking along the seashore at their leisure. The wind was calm and the waves were light. Suddenly, Max's eyes fell on a strange track in the sand. He stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding faster. The track was not the track of an animal he knew, nor was it old. It was recent. Max looked around slowly and pulled Simba towards him. At that moment, he understood that the island might no longer be as empty as he had thought.
At first, Max thought the sand might be his own footprint, but when he bent down and looked closely, his heart stopped. The footprint was that of a human, but unnaturally large, a size that made him seem like a giant or a wicked warrior from another time. Without thinking, Max gripped his rifle, his steps slow and deliberate, his breath held. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of air, every movement around him was under his scrutiny. Simba too changed. His ears were pricked, his body taut, and he was emitting a low, almost roaring sound, as if sensing a danger he couldn't see. After walking a little further into the forest, the view suddenly changed. In front of him were several small boats made of strong, beautiful wood, lined up on the shore as if someone had just disembarked. It wasn't just one boat, it was a sign that there were several. Right next to them were strange sounds, not speech, not singing, something he'd never heard before. At that moment, Max understood the terrifying truth. There were people on the island, but they weren't normal people. His heart began to pound violently, as if it would break his chest, and despite the terror that gripped him, his legs continued walking on their own, as if a force was pulling him forward. He approached the source of the sound and hid behind a huge tree, a tree whose trunk was so wide that it could cover his entire body. He pulled Simba towards him and put his hand on his neck to silence him and began to look, slowly, breath after breath. As soon as he saw the sight in front of him, the blood froze in his veins. In front of him was an entire tribe, men and women, their bodies painted with strange marks, their faces covered in colors of blood and mud. In the middle, a high fire was blazing, surrounded by a circle, and they were performing terrifying slaughter rituals. Screams, savage chants, and stone knives were rising and falling. Max felt the ground tilting beneath him. This wasn't just humans living on the island. This was a living nightmare. At that moment, as he hid and tried to control himself, suddenly one of them stopped and turned his face towards him as if his eye could see his exact location. And then Max understood that what was coming was much worse than loneliness. The drums were beating frantically, dum, 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 and the fire was blazing, its sparks flying into the sky, as if announcing Jay's death. In the middle of the platform, people were bound with ropes, their blood flowing, their bodies trembling. Their screams shook Max's heart to its core. His legs gave way, and he fell to the ground behind the tree, his whole body shaking. His mind was torn in two. One half screamed, "Run, if they see you, you'll die." The other half said, "If you stay silent, you're already dead." He knew perfectly well that if this tribe saw him, his fate would be the same as the people bound before him. But suddenly, his eyes met the eyes of one of the bound men, and he saw no fear, no terror. Raja saw a look of mercy, a look that said without words, "Save me, even if this is my last attempt." That look sealed something inside Max. 2 years of loneliness hadn't erased his humanity. He was still human, and his heart was still alive. He took a deep breath, steeled himself, and whispered, "I can't just watch someone die in silence, even if I die with them." He grabbed the rifle from behind the tree, waited a second, 2 seconds, and as soon as the right opportunity came, he pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot pierced the forest. The drums stopped abruptly, the chants turned to screams, the fire kept burning, but the rituals descended into complete chaos. The people in the tribe screamed, they ran, some grabbed their knives, others looked around, not understanding what had happened. In the midst of this confusion, one of the bound men somehow managed to untie his rope. He fell to the ground and got up and ran as fast as he could toward the forest. One shot hadn't just opened the door to danger. Max's life was saved when the young man Big ran ahead of him and Simba stiffened his body as if ready to attack. But before Max could make any decision, he heard a savage scream of anger and the sound of heavy footsteps approaching and the voice of someone shouting in a strange language, pointing in his direction. The tribe finally knew who had broken the rituals. And this time, Max was no longer just a spectator. He was the target. The atmosphere was so tense that no one understood what would happen next. The air was heavy, and time seemed to stand still. The tribal man approached Max. Strangely, his expression was devoid of anger, shouting, or threats. Suddenly, he placed his weapon on the ground, then knelt down, grasped Max's leg, and placed it on his shoulder. A strange gesture, but its meaning was clear. "You saved my life." Max was taken aback, but for a moment he felt a glimmer of hope. However, this moment was fleeting. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted. The man suddenly reached out and snatched Max's rifle. Max's heart sank. He felt that this misunderstanding could kill them both in a second. But as he focused, he noticed something crucial. The man didn't know how to hold the rifle properly. He was gripping it like a piece of wood, his hand not on the trigger correctly, his eyes darting around the weapon in confusion. Max immediately raised both hands, opening his palms. Step by step, his face was clear, sincere, as he tried to convey a message without words. "I'm not an enemy. I just want to be a friend." But language. A high dam stood between them. The man was interrupting Max's every move with a look of suspicion, fear, confusion, and doubt all mixed up on his face at the same time. Here, Max made a decision. Instead of anger, he chose humanity calmly. Without any sudden movement, he opened his bag, took out some fruit and dry food that he had kept, took a step back, and placed the food on a rock in front of him. With a simple gesture of his hand, he said to him without words, "This is for you." The man of the tribe looked at Max, then at the food, then back at Max again. The silence stretched from seconds to minutes, and suddenly his hand began to shake. He slowly lowered the rifle to the ground. He approached the rock, carefully picked up the fruit, smelled it, cut off a small piece, and tasted it. His eyes widened, not only from the taste, but from the idea that the person who broke the rituals of slaughter and who could have been an enemy had chosen to be a human being. At that moment, Max felt that one bullet had saved a life, but this food could change the fate of an entire island.
The man of the tribe sat on the ground next to Max again and slowly started approaching to eat, as if he had finally understood that Max was not dangerous. But at this moment, they heard together the sound of the roughness of the trees in the forest before they understood what was happening. 3 dangerous enemies suddenly came out of the trees, and their faces were clearly monstrous, as if they would not let anyone live. Max, confused for a moment, but he did not lose again. He grabbed his whole rifle quickly and started firing one-shots. The second enemy, the first enemy, fell to the ground immediately. But what happened after that, Max could not imagine. The man in the tribe, he who did not know how to hold a rifle originally, came out in front of him like a lightning from the sky. He grabbed his weapon and hit one of the enemies who hit him. Standing in the second, Max fell to the ground, and he was not alone with him. He had a real partner. This friend did not understand him with words, but he decided to stand by him in the battle. After they finished the enemies who appeared first, Max felt that the world was a little gifted, and he thought that they might have survived. But the moment that then shook Max from his atmosphere, the man of the tribe, the same person who was fighting his shoulder to shoulder, Max's blood was so terrifying, and a coughing sound came out unintentionally at this moment. That's it. Everything suddenly became the forest, the fire, the shots, and this guy is all mixed. Max stopped, frozen. I don't know how to move, but inside him he knew one thing. This island will not be left easily.
But not stupid, and maybe he even had a bit of humanity left in his heart. Little by little, Max decided to give him a chance. He took him to his home, offered him food, fruit, meat, and water. The man from the tribe ate everything calmly and reassured. For the first time in months, Max felt he wasn't truly alone, but fear still lingered in his heart. So he tied him up with a light chain at night to prevent him from escaping or causing any trouble. The next morning, something very strange happened. The man from the tribe untied the chain without making a sound and went straight to Max's room. Max heard the movement and woke up with a start, his heart pounding. He sensed a new danger inside the house. But when he saw who was standing in front of him, he froze, stunned. The same man he had tied up the night before was standing there, his face calm, looking at the food in front of him. At that moment, Max's heart broke, and he finally understood that the man had been wrong to suspect him the night before, and that he hadn't been. His intentions were malicious from the start. The chain had no effect, and most importantly, for the first time in months, they smiled at each other. Small smiles, but smiles full of mutual understanding, an understanding that even the strangest or most savage human being can have a heart. And in that moment, Max felt at peace for the first time in a long time,
and
It was
began
my
to believe
suspicion.
that loneliness could end, even if only for a brief moment, with trust and compassion.
Our film begins today in the 22nd century. Planet Earth is overflowing with garbage due to humanity's actions towards the environment. All humans have left to live on spaceships, leaving robots behind to clean up the mess. We see advertisements for the Starship Company trying to convince humans to leave Earth and live temporarily on the ship in space. However, after 700 years, the robots have failed to clean up the Earth, except for one robot named Wally. Wally was working, turning piles of garbage into small boxes. While he was working, he loved listening to music. He was with his friend Roach, who would ask him questions. Whenever he found something useful in the garbage, he would take it home. Among the things Wally had collected was an old romantic movie. Every time he watched it, he felt like falling in love. Then a new dust storm would come, so Wally would lock up his house and go to sleep. In the morning, he would get up because he needed to recharge. He charged using solar power, so he would stand in the sun until he was charged. After that, he would go back to work and amuse himself by looking at the things people found. He would take the things that were useful to him and throw away the things that weren't. After he encountered a problem with a fire extinguisher and didn't know how to use it, Wally opened a box with his laser and found a small squid inside. He put it in the box and went back. He went home, and then Wally found some laser beams moving on the ground. He didn't understand what they were, so he ran after them until many laser beams gathered around him. It turned out to be a spaceship that had landed on Earth. Wally was very scared, so he dug into the ground to hide. After the ship crashed, Wally came out, but he was still scared. A white robot named Eva came out of the ship, and Eva started flying around searching for something specific. Wally followed her, admiring her. When Eva sensed something moving behind her, she tried to shoot it, but luckily for Wally, the shot hit a rock. Wally kept chasing her, but he was scared, but Roach wasn't. Haifa fired a shot, but when she saw him, she liked him very much and played with him. She heard another sound from Wally, so she fired at him, and Wally went inside his box. When Haifa got closer and analyzed him with her laser, she realized he was the cleaning robot, so she left him and walked away. Every time Haifa went, Wally would follow her. As soon as she looked at him, Wally would get scared and try to run away, looking comical. He was always trying to get her attention in any way possible, but she wasn't interested and was still searching for something they didn't know. Once, while she was flying, a magnet was pulling her in, and she couldn't get away from it. Then, a shot went off and destroyed the ship containing the magnet. Wally saw her in a bad and depressed state and tried to approach her and joke with her. Haifa talked to her and introduced them. Wally saw a storm coming towards them, so he took refuge inside his cube. Haifa didn't know what to do in the storm and was scared. And then Wally grabbed her by the hands and took her inside his house. Wally was very excited about his house at that moment and was showing her the things he had. Haifa was a very autonomous robot and could use all of Wally's things autonomously, like solving the Rubik's Cube and Wally watching the movie he liked. Haifa was recording everything she saw, and Wally wanted to dance with her like in the movie, but she was a bit of a wild and strong robot and was going to destroy Wally's house. She loved Wally and made a line on the ceiling, and Wally had a swollen eye, but he had planned for this and had a piece of equipment. Wally, who was a bit of a witch, wanted to grab Diva, but Diva refused. She really liked the lighter, and Wally went to show her the plant he found. When Haifa analyzed it, it turned out to be a compass, and she flew into the air. Wally walked over to a chair and ran to catch up with Eva. Wally got close to her and asked permission to leave. We'll hear Mary and the girls on the screen as he tries to reach Eva. He managed to make Mary not look at the screen, and she was surprised by the outside world as if it were her first time. Wally walked with Eva until they took her to a robot named Zoto. Goto analyzes Eva, and she goes to wake up Captain McCree, who is also lazy and doesn't move from his chair. Goto informs Captain McCree of the news, and Wally hides under Captain McCree's desk. Captain McCree starts learning all the news about the ship and the current number of passengers. When he finds out the tokens are late, he gets annoyed and restarts the day from the beginning at 8 a.m. to greet the 255,000 people. He says the same 2 words every day and tells them that since the 700th anniversary, our voyage has been 5 years. I swear our grandparents would be happy that we lived like them, but Goto's robot interrupts him. They say Eva is back and no one is wanted. Eva wakes up, and McCree says this is the first time they've sent a robot to Earth and it's returned with positive results. When he presses on the plant's hair, an old video of the president appears.
In it, he says that if you're watching this video, it means a robot went to Earth and returned, proving that Earth is now habitable again. This means the time will come to return to Earth. Of course, they mean Eva when she found the plant, so Earth is habitable again. The president says to investigate this plant to confirm it's alive, and one ship will return all of Earth. If you have any questions, refer to the instruction manual and follow the instructions. Wally sneaks up on Eva, who is surprised when she sees him. She tries to hide so no one sees him. Then they open Eva to take the plant from her, but they don't find her.
Ahmd-Ai thinks Eva is playing the wrong game, so Captain McCree brings back the sheets to Earth and orders Eva to be repaired. McCree sees Willie, who greets him and holds a Tina in his hand. McCree orders Willie to be cleaned up and puts him in the same car as Eva. McCree analyzes the Tina, and the AI determines it's a material from Earth, made of sand or dust. McCree requests pictures and videos of Earth and is very surprised by the information and videos he sees. He asks the AI many questions about Earth and other things. Meanwhile, they take Eva and Willie to the repair shop. They turn Eva off and try to turn Willie off, but he gets caught in the middle and is immediately finished. He loses his makeup and is devastated in prison. He sees them repairing Eva, but he thinks they are torturing her. He shortens the barrier on his laser and moves to reduce her power. He runs and shortens the door to free her. The robots repairing Eva try to shoot Willie to stop him, but the blow hit the control device and blew it. The entire prison opened, and the robots that were locked in came to life. They went to the robots and thought they were missing something. They ran with them, and Haifa was running after them. The alarms went off, and the guard robots blocked their path. They took a picture of Wally and Eva, and this picture was displayed on all the screens on the ship. They thought Wally and Eva were terrifying and destructive robots and were about to attack them. But Eva took the picture and flew away. They managed to hide until they were safe. They took the elevator, and Wally wanted to apologize, but Eva was furious and broke the screen. After that, Eva took Wally to a spaceship to return to Earth, but Wally refused to leave unless she came with him. Then he heard someone's voice outside.
Tifa turned off everything and they hid. A small robot entered, imprinting its power, and carried Tifa's plant. It placed the plant in the craft to swing it back to Earth. Wally ran to catch the plant, but the small robot accidentally pressed the button, and the craft launched with Wally inside. Tifa escaped through the emergency exit and followed Wally. Wally was pressing all the buttons to stop the craft, but he accidentally pressed the self-destruct button. The craft will be destroyed in 20 seconds. Wally tried to break down the door and escape. Tifa saw the craft suddenly moving in front of her and thought Wally was dead, but it turned out he was flying in space using a fire extinguisher. The two dragons flew around each other until they finally met. He brought out the plant, keeping it safe. Tifa took it, overjoyed, and hugged Wally. They touched each other's feet and emitted a small spark, like a kiss. Wally was shocked and very happy, and they continued flying. The two of them danced together in space, and Mary saw Willie flying and recognized him. Reuven stood beside her and also recognized Willie. The two of them were delighted to see him, and by chance, they met for the first time in real life. Captain McCree was still getting acquainted with Earth. After she put out the fire, Tifa took Willie and they returned to the cistern, sneaking around to avoid security. Tifa left Willie hiding and went to Captain McCree's room. She immediately showed him the plant, and Captain McCree was thrilled and excited that they could return to Earth. He put the device on Tifa to see what Earth looked like now, based on the recording she had made. However, he was very disappointed, because Earth didn't look as beautiful as it did in the videos. He didn't see the blue sky, the farms, the fields, the parties, or the food. But when the film of Willie that Tifa had recorded was shown, Captain McCree saw them dancing and was very impressed with the head. He said, since if the plant lives, there's still hope. And when the two protagonists in the movie are mistreating each other, then
She liked that scene and thought about it. Then she watched the FIFA recordings when they were off, and Wally was trying to be correct in every way possible, to the point of putting himself in danger. At the same time, Wally was thinking about FIFA and held his hand like hers, trying to sneak in and enter the garbage entrance to get Captain McCree. All his blood was flowing and cleaning his tail. Captain McCree decided to return the ship to Earth, but Quat stood in his way and told him to give him the plant. Captain McCree refused to give it to him, and Quat was trying to take it, telling him that they wouldn't force him to return to Earth. He tried to take the plant from him by force, but McCree didn't want to give it to him. Quad showed another video of the president saying that he had the biggest problem, that the process of cleaning Earth of garbage had failed, and the level of toxic materials had made life impossible on Earth. Therefore, they had canceled the return to Earth operation, so you would remain as you were on the ship. He decided to cancel Operation A113, which was cleaning Earth, and all the robots that she was cleaning it and would immediately go to the ship to work there. McCree, with his strength, asked what year the video was from, and found that it was recorded about 700 years ago. McCree said that things had changed since then. The land had become habitable, and this plant was growing and maturing, which was proof of his statement. However, his strength had received orders not to return. He then took the plant from Jiva the first time, and told McCree that they had to break the orders and that no one should sail the ship. He brought his small robot and took the plant.
From the village of Fifa, she threatened him to bring the plant, and he would train the fire. So he made a robot and threw it in the trash, but Wally had already emerged and rescued the plant. Fifa was about to run towards me, but the small robot immobilized her with a laser, and Wally hid the plant inside. His power was so strong that Wally fell into the trash tunnel, and his power extinguished Fifa and threw her after him. His power also trapped Mockery, so he woke her up. Then Fifa woke up again with the help of some small robots and found herself in the trash storage area. Wally's large robots were taking the trash and turning it into cubes and throwing them into space. Wally and Fifa were inside the cubes and they were thrown into space. Fifa used her weapon and heated herself up, but she didn't free Wally. They were almost at the exit door, but then Mo appeared, who was walking behind Wally and got stuck in the inner door. The pressure of the ground was low, and Fifa was able to fly and grab onto Mo and the robots. The garbage collectors sensed something was wrong, so they closed the graduate store and went back inside. The one that wasn't working properly was found by Devin, who had been searching for a working chip in the garbage. She brought several chips, but none were suitable for Wally. Wally appeared and told her to go and complete her paperwork. At first, Eva refused and grabbed Wally. Then Wally told her to go and said the land was more important. Eva thought the land must be suitable for Wally, so she went and grabbed Wally. She flew out, covered in garbage. A security robot saw Eva, so Eva threw it to her side and took off. The robots were about to be released from prison. Eva and Wally saw them and ran after them. Toot saw them on a camera. Farah released the security robots to catch them. Mockery, who was trapped, saw Wally and Eva's warning message. Farah poked his control body and screamed on the screen, telling Eva to bring it. The plant is on the vehicle's roof, and it is disposing of it. And then, if Eva and the robots were in front of security, they would have revealed all their robots to Ajman, the security guard, and McCree, as in the video where he's holding the plant to trick Otto and make him focus on him. Eva would have acted, and when Otto arrived, McCree jumped on them, attacked him, and tried to destroy him. During this fight, the small robot fell and was destroyed. Our robots did their duty and finished off the security robots. McCree managed to press the button to return to Earth, and the robots started putting the humans to sleep because they would travel back to Earth. The capsule for the plant appeared, so Eva could put it in, but Otto lost control again and tilted the ship to the side so the plant would fall from them. All the humans fell on their chairs, and John and Mary managed to save some children. A large chair started to fall, but Eva managed to act before it became the target of the humans. Otto was lowering the capsule, but Wally tried to stop it and leave it open, which made Wally even more destroyed. Then McCree got up and stood on his feet for the first time and started walking until we hit the ship and got rid of it completely. Then the ship returned, and Haifa went to Wally and asked for help to get her the plant, but he couldn't find it. The humans went up to get it to the capsule, and Haifa put the plant in the capsule, which officially activated the return to Earth process. Wally was freed from the pressure he was under, but he wasn't working. Within 10 seconds, the ship flew back to Earth, and as soon as the ship landed and the people got out, Haifa flew Wally to his house and started fixing it, putting new parts in it, and made a hole in the roof so that sunlight could power it.
And indeed Wally was working again, but Wally didn't remember her and couldn't recognize her. Eva tried to remind him and show him the truth throughout the movie he loved, but Wally left her and went away. He regained his old memory and became a regular robot. Eva held his hand and began to say goodbye, giving him one last kiss. But then Wally held her hand and was able to remember her. Little by little, Wally remembered her, and his old self returned, and they spent a romantic moment together. Meanwhile, McCree, on the other hand, is showing humans how they were able to cultivate the earth, and how humans and robots are working together and starting to rebuild the Earth. And that's how we reached this episode. Stay tuned for the next one. If you liked this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and share it on Instagram and Facebook. When he saw this life, Fayez revealed it because he's fine. Bye-bye.